You know, of all of the things that can come to mind while you're driving, I would think the question of how fast am I going should probably be one that's answered like right away. Unfortunately, lately, my car has kind of been not wanting to tell me at all. As you can see, my speedometer has stopped working. So, I'm going to get home, hopefully without getting pulled over, and I'll get it up on jack stands, and we'll go through diagnosing and fixing my speedometer issue. So yeah, see you guys in a bit. All right, I'm home now. Thank goodness I didn't get pulled over or anything. I've got the hood up. I've already got a few things pulled out just to kind of save a little bit of time. I don't want this to go too long. But we're going to take a look under the hood at the vehicle speed sensor. The vehicle speed sensor is what tells the speedometer how fast we're going. It also tells the odometer how far we've gone. And none of that's working right now, so that's what we're going to check here. The things that I've already removed are... Well, there's kind of only one thing. It's just the air duct that goes from the filter box over to the throttle body. Pull that out of the way. It gives you a lot of room to get down in here. I guess I should mention the car I'm working on. This car is actually a 1992 Honda Accord. And a lot of the things that I'm doing here are going to be very similar, if not identical, to a lot of 1990s vintage Hondas and probably a lot of other vehicles. This one is a manual transmission, and I had to kind of loosen up my transmission linkage just to get access to this. But let's go ahead and let's look down here. So this right here is my shift linkage, and it sits about right there. So I had to kind of loosen up, move it out of the way to get to this. Right here is actually that's a vehicle speed sensor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull, if I can get a good angle on this, we're going to go ahead and just pull that plug off of there. And then if we look at this plug, don't run away from me like that. So if we look at this plug, there's 3 pins, there's 3 connectors down inside this plug. Now the pin off closest to my thumb is going to be the ground pin, and that's going to have a black wire attached to it on the other side. The pin over on the other side is actually the signal wire, and that's going to be an orange wire. And then the middle pin is actually that's coming from the battery. That's battery voltage, and it's going to be a yellow wire on the back of that. So let's go through and kind of diagnose what's going on down here. So I'm going to put my meter into continuity test mode. This meter has one that'll beep at me. So the first thing I'm going to check is to make sure that I have continuity on that black wire to the vehicle ground. And that'll ensure that I still have a good ground on there. So I'm going to put the red probe on that first pin there, the black wire, and then just touch a metal part of the motor, and it's beeping at me. I have continuity at ground. Now the next thing I'm going to do is move that red probe over to the middle wire to check for battery voltage. Now the only way you're going to get battery voltage here is if you actually have the ignition turned on. So with the key turned to the ignition 2 clicks, that's the only way you're going to get voltage out to this. So with that there, let me move so you can see the voltmeter here. Is it going to stand up? Give me a second here. Stand up. And there we go. All right, so red probe there. Now if I touch ground, we should see, and put it in voltage, DC volts. There's a lot of glare there. So I've got the red probe attached to the middle pin there. I'm going to touch ground. We can see 11.8, 11.9 volts. That's going to be battery voltage. So I'm good there. The next thing I'm going to check, I'm going to move that red probe over to the last connector, to the last pin, and I should be seeing about 5 or 6 volts coming into there when I touch ground. 4.8, that is close enough to 5 volts. So I am getting power out to my speed sensor. So everything looks good on that end. The harness is all good. Everything's working properly there. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this back in down here, and then we're going to move on to the next part of diagnosing this, which is going to happen inside the vehicle. Okay, now for the next part of the diagnosis. The next thing we're going to do is actually check to make sure that there is a signal coming from the vehicle speed sensor into the car. And the way we're going to do that is by probing a connector underneath the dash. Now, I can't get the camera under here. I'm probably just going to have to show you a picture of what I'm talking about. But underneath the dash, on the driver's side, close to the door, there's 2 connectors underneath here. One of them is green and the other one is brown. On the brown connector, there's a orange wire. Now that is the wire that's going to be sending the signal from the vehicle speed sensor into the dash. So in order to test that, I'm going to need to put the car up on jack stands so that the wheels are up off the ground. I'm going to start the car and put it in gear, and then I'm going to probe that to make sure that there is a signal coming from the wheel, from the speed sensor into here. So let me go ahead and get the car started. And then put it in gear and let out the clutch slowly. Now, my wheels are spinning right now. They're up in the air, but they're spinning right now, so there should be input coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my voltmeter to AC volts, and I'm going to wedge it in here so you can see it. Now we're testing AC volts because this is coming in as a pulsed signal, so it's fluctuating constantly between high and low. I think it's 5 volts. It goes up 5 volts, 0 volts, 5 volts, 0 volts. So we need to test it as AC instead of DC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the red, my positive, and put that on the orange wire. Then I'm going to take the black and just find a ground point, and we're going to check to see what we have coming off of this. There is my orange. And then here's the black onto ground. And I hardly have any voltage coming in there. That's 1.9 volts. It looks like every once in a while it jumps up to about 5 where it's supposed to be. So it looks like that is in fact a bad sensor. So I am going to replace that. Now I have looked this up. They range anywhere, depending on where you get it. I have found it online for about $50. I did price it out at my local parts store. That goes up to around $80 or $90. Fortunately, in my case, I happen to have a few replacements. I've got a couple of transmissions sitting in the garage. I have some replacements, so I'm going to take one off of that. I'm going to throw it in, and we're going to come back and check this again and see what we got. All right, so we've determined that this sensor is in fact bad now. I've already pulled my spare off of one of my spare transmissions in the garage. So I'm just going to show you real quick how to replace this sensor. So let's go back down here. You're going to want to keep that shift linkage loose, and then we're going to unplug this again. Got that unplugged. Now this is actually a very simple sensor to replace. There's just 2, you can see them on the side here. There's just 2 10 millimeter bolts, one on each side here, and then the whole thing lifts up. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove those. Oh, come here. All right, got the 2 bolts out there. And then if we look down in here, this will be able to, sorry, my hand's in the way, you can't really see it. I can twist, you just kind of give it a little bit of twist, wiggle, pull it up and out. Down inside there's actually a little pin right down in the transmission. This pin right here that's all out of focus is the linkage pin between the transmission and the inside of your vehicle speed sensor. You're going to want to keep that. If you've got a new speed sensor, hopefully it came with a new pin. You'll use the new pin instead of the old one. But that new pin, you're going to want to put that in first so you don't drop it down in. And you just set your new vehicle speed sensor down in there. Give it a little bit of a wiggle to line that pin up. Line up the holes for the bolts, and then drop those 2 bolts in. And that is it. That is how simple it is to replace these speed sensors. All right, one last thing I forgot to mention, and this is crucial. I would hope that would go without saying, but you do need to make sure that you plug that sensor back in. So there you go. Now I'm just going to button this back down. Where it goes is just three bolts that hold that all together. Then we'll go back into the car and we'll check it out. All right, I've got the new sensor in, or the replacement sensor, I guess. Same situation, wheels are up in the air, car's in gear, car's going, the wheel's spinning. So now, if I check with my meter here, so again, we're on AC voltage to check that. Then again, red wire, red probe goes into the orange signal wire, black probe to ground. I'll do that real quick. And find the orange wire here. There it is. Look at that, we can see 5-6 volts, fairly steady, but it's consistently above 5 volts, and that's what we're looking for there. Now, if you're curious, I can show you what the signal looks like as it comes into the car with this little oscilloscope. So if I probe that signal wire again, you can actually see that there is, in fact, a pulsed signal coming in. It goes high and low, high and low, high and low, and then as the speed increases, so does that pulsing frequency. And that's how it works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get kind of cleaned up, get the hood closed. I'm going to go for a drive and make sure that this works all right. And I think that'll be good. I'll see you in a little bit. Look at that! I got a speedometer now. I know how fast I'm going. And with that, I'm going to call it a good fix. And I can now think about other things while I drive. Like, why does nobody use turn signals anymore? I just don't know.